they're probably more familiar with Bolt Castle because of its location, but Casa Loma, very, very interesting. So, Ian, I want to ask you, because you've been there, have you done a paranormal investigation at Casa Loma before, or just visited?
Not an official investigation. As you say, they don't allow that to take place any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were there, was about 5 years ago, and that's actually the first time that I've been there since I was a kid in school, and we were there on a field trip.
Right.
And I remember being there on this field trip, and it was very, very cool to go there 5 years ago and see some of the stuff that I recall from way back.
Mm-hmm.
Certain rooms, the tunnel, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But no, when we were there, we did bring some paranormal equipment with us, but it was just kind of a, let's just use it as we go along, nothing official. Maybe try to get some EVPs, and that was about it.
Right. So did you manage to get anything when you were there? Did you get any?
There nothing really EVP-wise, but I'll tell you, the place that creeped me out the most, and I've mentioned before that I'm not, psychic or sensitive in any way whatsoever. Right. What creeped me out the most of the entire place is that swimming pool down in the basement.
Oh, the unfinished pool, yes.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about it. We went into that room, and the lights are all dimmed. It was very dark. It almost felt damp. I'm not sure about that. It is
damp there, for sure. I agree with you. That is a damp area. And I think the reason that it is so damp is because, of course, it's underground. This is a swimming pool that was built in the basement of the house. And it's all concrete, and of course, no heating. There's no central heating in that area. So I think it just tends to pull the dampness from the surrounding soil on the outside of the building. But it's definitely an interesting spot for sure. It is one of the weirdest. Like, you go down there and you're like, it was never finished, so the pool was never used. So we don't get to see the luxury that it would have been, because I'm sure had they finished that swimming pool, all the walls in there would have been painted with murals, probably to depict some faraway sunny location. And it probably would have had beautiful tiles inside the pool and around the surround. And so it would have been a much different room than it is today had it been finished. But it's just now.
Absolutely. It would have been as luxurious as the entire rest of the building itself. Mm-hmm. But you go in there, and it's just this concrete room. You can see where in the walls how everything was structured, that there was going to be some opulence put into it.
Oh, yes.
And it's just this big concrete space.
Yeah, it's like a big concrete swimming pool, like literally just a big empty.
Oh, yeah,
and it's not very deep, right? Because when we talk about a swimming pool now, we think of like, the deep end's got 8 feet. But back then, that entire pool was about 4 feet deep. And then there was there's a little slope on one end that goes down to maybe 6 feet. But it's not deep because people didn't swim the same way we swim today. Right, when we go in a swimming pool, it was more of a leisurely, and a lot of people couldn't swim either. So you didn't want a swimming pool that was like today, where it was this, big, deep, you could dive into the deep end kind of swimming pool. This was, I think, more of just really a luxury, right? It was
sort of a social kind of thing that they would have had.
Yeah. It would have. It definitely would have been for when they had those very, special parties, and you could come in and swim in the wintertime even inside the castle, right? Which would have been something quite spectacular. And the fact that it has a central heating system in the castle, so much like Bolt Castle, it was run on a huge furnace, right? And so that furnace obviously is not functioning today, but that's that tunnel that houses the furnace, and that would have been a 24-hour job, just keeping that furnace stoked in the wintertime. Right. So the castle itself is very opulent. It's very large. It has, I think it's 135 rooms, if I'm correct in remembering. I'm kind of trying to pick my own brain here to see if I can remember how many rooms it had. And in total now for the public to view, there isn't that many rooms. But at the time, it was quite opulent. So it technically has 7 floors. So like the Winchester Mystery House, it had that the tower would have made it 7 floors before the earthquake. This has 7 floors, including the towers. It's 64,700 square feet.
Oh, well,
so it's massive.
The architecture alone is just incredible.
Right. It's absolutely huge. And there was also on the
I've
property...
just kind of Googled what you were talking about there, and what I'm reading, it says there are 98 rooms.
98 rooms, that's it, yeah. I think Bolt Castle has a few more. But that's the thing. It's interesting because I'm reading, too, back at I'm just going to read sort of the thing, because in 1903, Henry Palat, who was a financier at that time, purchased 25 lots from developers Kurland and Rolfe. So imagine 25 lots. That's huge, right? That's a big piece of property. Yeah. And they started to build with, there was huge, massive stables there, a potting shed, a hunting lodge, which was also sort of deemed the coach house. And those were a few hundred feet from the actual building. So the hunting lodge is 2 stories. It's 4,380 square feet with servants' quarters. And as soon as the stable complex was completed, Palat sold his summer house in Scarborough to his son, and they moved into the hunting lodge. The stables were used as a construction site for the castle, and it also served as the quarters for male servants and for machinery. It says, and some of the machinery still remains in the rooms under the stables. So that's the thing. I don't know how, Ian, when you were there, you would never have been allowed to go down below because it's not open to the public.
No.
I have seen rooms, and it's equally as large as the stable above, right? So it's in a state of, it's repaired.
When we were there, I remember the stables, and yes, there were areas that were closed off that obviously went to other places within the building itself.
Right,
and,
you can come
that's
in.
Probably what you're talking about right there.
Yes, because there's a staircase that goes down when you come in the main entrance, when you come up, because the tunnel takes you to the stables. And when you come up and you go back up to the ground level and you come into the stable, there's a staircase that goes downstairs. And then there's also staircases that go up to the servants' quarters above, which are not open to the public either. So now they just use the stables. Those are open so that you can see them. And they've appeared in many television shows, right? And Casa Loma was actually the original X-Men. It stood...
movies too, X-Men. It was actually one of my favorite... Yeah, one of my favorite paranormal films is called Crimson Peak.
Oh, yeah,
and,
Crimson Peak, yes.
Much of that film was shot on location at Casa Loma as well.
Yeah, they used a lot of that one. They used the Tucker House, the Scottish Rites building in Hamilton for that. And
right,
they also used Dundurn Castle as well in Hamilton as well for Crimson Peak. So there were some shots that were filmed indeed at Casa Loma, but I think a majority of them were done at the Tucker Mansion in Hamilton, which is now the Scottish Rites building. But very similar again in their thing. But I know that the X-Men, the first movie, when it was Xavier's The School, it was the interior shots were used. Were Casa Loma, and also is it A Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis? They shot in there as well. There's been literally Murdoch mysteries. Everything has been filmed at Casa Loma, right? It's just, it's really a spectacular building to go into. And at this point in time, just sort of looking back at the historical references and sort of the time period, I just want to touch on that so people get an idea of what happened to this place, right? Because the house itself cost about $3.5 million to build in 1911. That's a lot of money.
Oh my gosh.
And then when World War I started, the construction was halted. So it's 98 rooms covering those 64,700 feet, the largest private residence in Canada. So it is indeed, to this day, still the largest private residence in Canada. No matter what Drake thinks, his house is not as big as Casa Loma. So they also, at the time, they had an elevator and they had an oven large enough to cook an entire cow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy, right?
Now, is that oven still there, Sika, or is that something from the past?
It was there. I know it was there when I worked there. I'm not sure it's there anymore.
Because I don't remember seeing it when we were there.
It was never open to the public, right? So the kitchen in the castle itself was in the basement, and I believe now that's where the gift shop is. Was the original kitchen?
Yes, the gift shop. So, also where the swimming pool is. There's a little restaurant down there.
So I believe that was where the kitchen was originally. So I'm not sure whatever happened to that stove. It's not on display, which is kind of a shame. I don't know if it got sold off or what, but it would have been an amazing big cast iron stove that was big enough to literally roast an entire ox or cow in. So it was huge. There's also 2 vertical passages for the pipe organs. So if you go in off of Palat's office in that little hallway, they've opened the wall to expose so that you can see the pipe organ pipes now there. It had a central vacuum, which is, we think sort of back to 1911 and go, wow, central vac. And then, of course, 2 secret passages in Palat's ground floor office, the swimming pool, 3 bowling alleys in the basement as well. 2 were never completed. The 3rd floor was pretty much left unfinished and serves today as the Regimental Museum for the Queen's Own Rifles. And Palat joined the regiment as well. He was a commanding officer, and he was knighted for his designation and dedication to the regiment. He later served as an honorary colonel and was promoted to major general when he retired. So, money buys you prestige, right?
The bowling alley that in the basement that was completed, that's now the gift shop.
Yes. Yeah. Because there's a lot in that basement now that's not open to the public.
Oh.
Right. So, no, there's only really now when you go downstairs into the castle, into the basement, the area that's open now, like I say, where the gift shop and the little restaurant are and the swimming pool. I mean, that's only really under the Great Hall. If you think about it, when you come in, Ian, and you go down that staircase.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of basement that's not open to the public. Right. So, I mean, it's a monumental task for the upkeep of the building itself, even today. And when Palat actually was building the building, like I say, the 3rd floor, which would have at that time been considered guest bedrooms and possibly additional servants' quarters for the women, that it was never really completed. And so it came because he ran out of money. But the other thing that happened too was World War I. And at that time, they just, there wasn't the money to spend anymore. And so what happened with Palat, his story, because, it's really a riches to rags story for him. It's not the rags to riches, because his family was always fairly wealthy. But he did make money with his electrical and also as a financier. But after the war, the city decided that enough was enough with people of money, and they started to raise their property taxes